Kick it.
Oh, it's me. I guess I got it today. Welcome to another episode of Hardheaded. I'm your host, Matt Amos. And with me, as always, is Troy, 3-Shot Trussell, Chet, something or other Sears.
Yeah.
And today we have special guest, Matt Lillie. Welcome to the podcast, Matt.
Thanks for having me on.
Appreciate you being here. And let's see. So today, same format as always. We've got our special guest. We will have our top 3 places to fish. And I believe, Chet, you're going to end us with a good word today.
I will end us with a good word.
Perfect. All right.
Yeah. So our special guest today is Mr. Matt Lillie. Matt and I met recently. Well, I guess it's been about a year now.
Yeah, a little over a year.
Things fly.
Yeah, they
right?
do. Well.
But got a late text one night. I guess it was around 10 o'clock. Mm-hmm. And he was like, hey, you make videos, right? I came across one of your wedding videos, and it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And I happened to be up, so I was like...
Happens all the time, by the way. People just randomly texting you late at night saying your wedding videos are so great.
Exactly. And I was like, yeah, thanks, And he's like, I need you to make some videos for me. And so we set up a meeting, and we had a great meeting after that and started doing some videos for a company that he just started called Next Level Method.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so what I wanted to talk to you about today was when did the idea of Next Level Method come into your head? And
or what is Next Level Method?
Yeah, what is it?
Right. Yeah,
first for our listeners.
Yeah.
And then how did you come about that? So
those are big questions.
Yeah.
So what is it? So it's really designed to help people take their life to the next level in what area of life that they choose to, right? Mm-hmm. So and typically when I'm thinking about taking life to the next level, it's like, do you want to take your nutrition, you want to take your diet, you want to take your professional life, you want to take your relationships. And so we have certain categories we focus on, and then we provide education. We're really leaning into really working with other contributors. There's a lot of great people out in the world that have amazing insights into different areas of life. And so really bringing them on board and building a community of people that just kind of almost like life hacking, but learn from people who actually are getting results in that area of life. I mean,
right.
I'm a big fan of Tony Robbins and went to a lot of Tony Robbins stuff. And he always says the fastest way to success is finding somebody who's doing what you want to do.
Right.
And then just go find out what they're doing and do that, right? Let's not make it too hard. So that's really what Next Level Method is. And gosh, the thought. I think it's just it came on over years. I did a lot of stuff, like I said, with Tony Robbins, did a lot of stuff overseas and spent quite a bit of time in India with monks and saints and sages and gurus and you name it. I probably spent time with that type of a person.
Yeah.
Nuns here in town, priests. I just kind of was a sponge and absorbed stuff. And over time, I think COVID kind of magnified it, but definitely pre-COVID, we did a class at OptiLife, the founder of OptiLife Vitality Club and Spa here in town. And so we did a kind of a beta course there, live with about 8 people, and they just had over 8 weeks, and we had amazing results. And I thought, gosh, this is really cool. And I was really just taking things that I'd learned out in the world,
right, and
bring them together, different tools, ways to communicate, and that's kind of how it started. So that's probably been 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
At least the thoughts and ideas, and we've been working hard on it for about a year. Well, since we met.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, we did. We created some videos that did some beta testing, and I tell you what, some of the stuff that you put into practice. Yeah. I mean, we shoot these videos, and I'm editing them, and I'm learning stuff as we're going.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest things is that I've learned through just doing some of those videos with you is, the biggest thing, if you want to help people, you got to help yourself first,
right?
Because you have to be in a good mindset and a good place. To where you're functioning properly,
right,
to be able to pick others up and help others out.
So that's the podcast videos, or are there other videos?
No, so we have the podcast, but we actually have a series. Troy really helped produce a series of education videos. We have a 30-day course now. That's not available in the podcast or in the app right now.
Okay, because all I know of Next Level Method is I kind of caught on to you guys on Instagram.
Sure.
And
Yep.
know that you interview people and kind of have that. So there's a whole other
education piece there.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
Cool.
And over the next 12 months, we'll be retooling and bringing on, like I said, a lot of contributors. So the podcast is a great way to meet people that are in that space, and then just inviting them to come into the community and contribute their gifts, and then make that available to everyone, basically. In fact, one of the apps that we're studying right now is actually the Bible app that Life Church put together.
Yep.
And I really like the format, and so we've actually reached out to Life Church, and they've kind of told us how they put some stuff together, and because I really just like the general, simple, straightforward, but just lots of different categories of life and ways to kind of get perspective. And as you were saying, Troy, I think it's all about it's an inside job, right? This whole life is an inside job, and so you got to put on your oxygen mask first, and then let other people see that you put your oxygen mask on, and then they'll start to put theirs on. So none of us can really affect change in anybody else's life other than through our own example, or at least that's my perspective.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of just fascinated by the concept, but there are platforms that try to help people learn skills. And this is more of a platform to help people be better at being themselves.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
That's
so
in fact,
it's
that
not
may be
like
our new tagline right
oh,
there.
hey.
I like that. So you heard it here first.
Yeah. But
Yes.
we're not going to teach you how to cook better.
Right.
But we're going to teach you how to be a better father, or be better a better person at work, or just to make a bigger impact on your community, or
exactly. Some of the teachings that I learned along the way, this one of the guys actually in India would say life is relationship. If you really look at your life, it's all about, now it's a relationship with yourself, relationship with God, relationship with food, relationship with money. But everything is a relationship, and it all happens between the ears, most all of it. So how do we improve those relationships? And from my own perspective, I mean, I think anybody in the education space, especially in this education space, I think you have to suffer a certain amount, or have enough setback and enough trials and tribulations, so to speak, in your life before you have a passion to help other people. You kind of have to get your butt kicked enough times. You're like, you know what, this sucked. And when I learned how not for it to suck, then I want to share that. So I think, as I talk to people on our podcast and as we reach out to people, that's what I'm really inspired by. Is there's a ton of people out there that are authors, that have podcasts, that have workshops that they put on, and they all come from a place of, at this point in my life was rock bottom, and here's how I got myself out, and that's a great roadmap for other people, especially people that are in similar circumstances, because we all have different circumstances.
So one of the things I think would be very difficult, I mean, just as a human in general, and it's kind of neat that you're talking about the rock bottom thing, because typically it takes the worst thing that could happen, worst in air quotes there,
right?
For somebody to admit the truth.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would imagine one of the biggest challenges to a business like this, or just an initiative like this, would be to get people to truly examine themselves before life spins out of control and they get there.
And I think, that was my story. My life didn't spin out of control, but it certainly got to a point where it was very void.
Right.
And it had a lot of uncertainty and a lot of internal suffering, mental suffering, you could call it. And so I got to that point, and I thank goodness that I didn't have to lose my house and my car and my friends. I mean, I didn't have to lose all that. And from the outside, most people would say, that guy's pretty much the same guy, but internally it's a totally different experience.
I find it is, and I've known people that have gone through the crap and recovered, some that haven't. But I think one of the most sad things that you could see in life is somebody that avoids doing anything, and just literally skates below the radar, and then gets to a point, normally towards the end of their life, and they're just like, man, why was I even here?
Right. Yeah, they say at the end of the life, right, you regret the things that you didn't do, not the things that you did. You go out and do stuff, you make mistakes. That's living, right? That's getting kind of, I've heard it said, you got to kind of get dirty. You got to get out there and get your hands dirty if you want to be alive. Yeah. And too often, I know at a certain point in my life, it was like, I just want to do my job and not piss anybody off and not have anybody like coming, Right. I just wanted to kind of just not really, kind of tread water, but I didn't really want to upset the apple cart too much. And that's when I was kind of towards a low point and getting really numb and just saying, this isn't really living. This is just showing up to work every day. And
right.
I tell a story in the video, I think you've heard, and I toured it on stage a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
But basically, one day I'm sitting at my computer, and this is, I think, in 2007, and I'm pecking away, and it's kind of desk like this, and I'm pecking away for hours and hours, and I was reading email and everything, and finally I was just like, if there was a monkey like right here on my desk, because I had an L-shaped desk, I was like, if there was a monkey right here, and that monkey's watching me, he's gonna think I'm insane. Because what am I doing? I'm tapping on this little piece of plastic, and I'm looking at a little piece of plastic, and nothing else is happening. I'm just sitting here in this space doing basically nothing, but pecking away at this little thing. And I'm like, who's insane here? Right. And that was that moment for me that it went, okay, something's really wrong with the way I'm living life. And then I'm fairly, I don't know, I think I'm kind of a lazy person, but that's only because I take a while to get started.
Right.
But once I get started, I'm a grinder, right? I'm going to grind on it till I figure it out.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was the question came, okay, if this isn't living, then what is, and who do I have to go talk to figure that out?
Right.
And I think I'm still answering that question today. Who do I have to talk to?
But you're bringing people along with you on your journey of answering that question, right?
Yeah, I think it's fairly entertaining watching me go through that journey. But yeah, I think so. And I think there's a lot of us going. And for me, I don't know what your guys' experience of COVID was, but COVID kind of magnified another turning point in my life, which was, I'm in the nursing home business. I'm in the assisted living business here locally. Those industries got hit real hard.
Yeah.
I own a fitness facility. It was closed for 2 months. So no financial, had to lay everybody off. And so really, really tough time for somebody who considers himself a business person to watch everything that you built just kind of go dark,
right?
Or hemorrhaging cash. Mm-hmm. And so all of a sudden it was just like, okay, I'm not good at making money anymore. All the self-doubt, all the worry, all that just flooded in. And so for 2 months, I'm working out of my basement now, remotely. And I think that's for me when kind of the next magic moment in my life happened, which was kind of this, I call, for me, it was God said, hey, all that you've traveled. I've given you resources. I've given you time before I got married and had kids. You've done all this stuff. You've been exposed to all these great teachings, but what are you doing with it?
Right.
And I was like, and that was kind of like the sledgehammer that hit me. And it took me, quite a bit of time through COVID to finally go, okay, I don't know exactly what I'm going to do, but I got to do something because there's people out there that are experiencing suffering and they don't even know they have an option to get out of it. I know that I have the option to get out even if I'm wallowing in it in the moment.
Right.
But there's a lot of people that don't know that there's a way out.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not necessarily for me to tell them what to do. It's more just to say there's a way out. Right. You don't have to struggle with this forever.
Right.
So
that kind of reminds me, and I don't know, I think it hit me in college, but education is nothing without application.
Right.
Like why know something
right.
if you're not going to do
exactly.
something with it, right?
Exactly.
So there's no value to an education if you're not going to apply it to some part of your life.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the great things about what y'all are doing with the Next Level Method podcast is because pretty much everybody that comes on there as a guest has one of those stories.
Oh yeah.
That it's just been what they are doing in serving others has birthed out of their pain.
Yeah.
And they have been able to come out of that pain with a story that can help other people. And that's pretty much what I would say 95% of the people that y'all interview are doing in their life. And it's pretty incredible.
Yeah. So, and there may not be a big shift, because I've worked for a large company for over 20 years and was sitting there typing the emails and I was most of that time I was in the quality department. So problems like just what's the next problem? And then you get so consumed with the widget and just forget about the world of people around you.
Right.
And so it wasn't a drastic, I'm going in a new direction. It was, the widget allows me to be here around all these people. And everybody I deal with is typically stressed out about a big problem.
Right.
So how can I make an impact in the people that are around me, through the conduit of the job that we're in and the problem that we're dealing with? And I mean, some of the more major issues that we dealt with, whether they be with certain suppliers or certain customers, we actually have a really strong bond having worked through that together because it wasn't just about the widget anymore. It was about how can we get through this together, or what do we need to do to better communicate. Now, Matt, I'm sure you've done a lot of that in the Marines as well, in the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps.
get it right.
No, but because I've talked to. We had a guest on here, Anthony, that was with you. You just weren't the normal sergeant. right? You were somebody that cared about people, and
Yeah, I think that's just part of,
that's kind of who you are.
yeah, I mean, it's kind of built in, but, a lot of it was instructed, as well, because I wasn't the leader that I was prior to going to infantry squad leaders course. And then that course, I still, to this day, is the absolute best course the best leadership course that I've ever been to in my entire life. I mean, but it was extremely intensive because the Marine Corps focuses on that small unit leader, and I mean, I think it was eight weeks, all day, every day, sometimes spend the night and doing, of course it was night operations and stuff like that, but
the cool stuff.
yeah, everything that the instructors are teaching you, they're doing with you at the exact same time. And they're showing you that leadership the whole way through. And I took this after my first injury. And so I was still dealing with, some of the after effects of that, with just physical limitations, I guess you guys brought it up a couple podcasts ago, or just to me outside of it, but my breathing, right? And it's like, well, if I get this nostril blocked at all, this one doesn't breathe. So then I sound like Darth Vader when I'm, so y'all have
Amos.
You all have to warn me if that happens, because I don't know that I'm doing it, but, they looked at some of that and they're like, hey, if this is affecting you in this way, you're still going to have to find a way to lead from the front, and so they really worked with me through that. They didn't just say, hey, you're done. Right. We're going to work with you through that. And so that was pretty amazing. And I guess the question that I would have for you is, when you're talking about helping people and trying to get them through things, whenever I offer that, a lot of the response that I get is, well, my situation is not as bad as yours. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think that I don't consider this a bad situation. I've got it pretty good. I've made it through some difficult times, but to me, they really weren't. On the outside, I guess everybody would say that they're difficult, but I look at it and I was like, it really wasn't that bad. Mm-hmm. And it's all just kind of a frame of mind, but how do you overcome that in somebody who's looking at you and saying, well, your problems are just worse, and they kind of close themselves off because they don't want to talk to you because they think they're less.
And I'll try. I think I understand the question, but ultimately, as we're building out our community, in the beginning, and Troy mentioned it, we were kind of shooting stuff that I knew, and then the more I was on the podcast, the more I realized that there's just a lot of great people out there that are specialists in certain areas.
Yep.
And so I'm a generalist, right? I typically I'm an entrepreneur. That's you gather stuff and you clip it all together and you hope it works. And so it's more of an invitation into the space by people who have actually been in the space or been in that situation, but really just inviting people to hear that story and to decide how much they want to engage in that. Because until I was ready to do something about it, I was just a voyeur at that point, right? I'm just watching life and I'm listening to things and I'm and trying to get myself motivated. But until I had that internal drive, you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make it drink type analogy, right? So I think if people aren't ready, they just aren't ready. But as long as we're in front of them on a consistent basis and have a message that's different messages, but all leading to the truth about who they are, then at that point when they're ready, they can decide how much they want to go down that path. Because, I went to some of this stuff, this Tony Robbins stuff, and spent time in India and all this, and I was ready, so I was absorbing. I had other friends that went through, and it was nice for them, and they had maybe some change, but it wasn't the, gung-ho and all in.
It wasn't a huge catalyst.
Right, it wasn't a huge catalyst.
But probably not everybody needs a huge catalyst.
Well, that's true.
Right?
That's
Sometimes
true.
it's a combination of a little bit here, a little bit here. Well, now I'm going to add to that. And then over time you look back and you have changed substantially.
Exactly. And I believe in that a ton, because I would go to stuff and, it's kind of the hype and the show and the 3 days, the week, the month at one point. And you're there, but what happens when you come back? And I think those incremental steps are so much more important and that's why really we're doing it around community and not just here's a teaching or here's a virtual class or even here's a live class and then it's over. It's more of come be in community in smaller groups for a year, 2 years, whatever that looks like for you, and decide what you need, and then just being around, I find, and I'm sure you guys do too, just being around inspiring people is inspiring.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. I can listen to somebody talk about any type of company, any type of product, anything, because I'm an entrepreneur. If they're passionate about it, all of a sudden I'm passionate about it. I'm like, wow, that's how you make a carburetor? Wow, that's incredible, right? I mean, so it's kind of like that. I think when you're going through personal transition, it's just being around people that are going through it. I get inspired, no matter what happened in my life. We had a workshop a couple of weeks ago, and at the end of the workshop, I mean, this guy was probably one of the most inspiring parts of the whole workshop. And I don't even know all that story, but
we can tell it to you, I'm sure.
But it was amazing just to be in the space and watching people lean in and kind of, you could tell it was just after being isolated and kind of alone and not as social as we have been.
Yeah.
It's just nice to get around people that are like, hey, let's figure this thing out and let's go live a little bit more. Let's take a little deeper breath and let's open our eyes a little bit wider and let's go help some people a little bit more.
And I find it fascinating, and it just made me think that, I'm an introvert, but I was impacted. You kind of think, it'd just be great. I mean, this guy right here too. If I'd never had to see another person again, I'd be just totally fine with it, And
he pointed at Matt Amos. I just want to make that clear
for the record.
But I mean, but then you realize that separation from community, and that's really what it was.
Exactly.
When you look at the lockdowns, and then I look at, it's been a long time that we've been back at where we are. Like, I mean, it's just, there's really, our kids have been in school all year. We haven't had to do any of the crazy hybrid stuff, and everything's just seemed to be normal. But then you realize that there are other parts of the country, of the world right now that are still have some restrictions in place where people have been deprived of that community. And sometimes it's voluntary, right? Some people are just still not wanting to get out. But I mean, there's got to be, a huge impact, negative impact on those that have been deprived of that for so long. And you're creating a kind of a space for people to engage without having to without those boundaries.
Exactly. And, just part of what I've put in my brain over the years is actually the study of the blue zones. And that's the places in the world where people live the longest, the healthiest.
Yep.
And community is such a huge part of aging, right? And aging well.
Community and walking.
That's right. Community walking.
I've seen that NPR documentary or whatever it was, PBS.
Right. But community and sense of purpose. And once you kind of disconnect, at least that was my experience during COVID. Once I kind of disconnected from community, my sense of purpose also began to get, I just got lost in that and said, okay, well, what am I supposed to be doing, right? Because this what I'm doing isn't working. I'm not around people anymore. I found I have not, I guess I probably will never be normal again compared to what I was before, because I was not an introvert, but I needed time. But during COVID, I actually became more and more introverted to the point now where it's almost awkward to go out and be around people.
Right.
Because I've just gotten out of the habit or out of the practice or whatever. It's like, oh, okay, I'm good just hanging out with the family and the kids and hanging close to the house. But I know that ultimately for service, I've got to put myself out there and continue to lean in.
Right.
Yeah. And to your point, Chet, before the fall in Genesis, God noticed that Adam was alone. So that was like a negative emotion before there was sin in the world.
Yeah.
And so he created Eve. So, that just shows that we're beings meant to be in community, and it's, it's healthy for us, good for us.
Totally.
And so, Matt, can you speak just a little bit about Next Level Method? And because I know you and Richard talk about the 4 pillars that are around Next Level, and just for our listeners so they can understand just a little bit.
Sure. So, and you can put life into different categories. So we just came up with 4 categories, and then there's lots of subcategories. But ultimately, it's energy. How am I gaining? And most of the time, when we think energy, it's our physical energy. What am I putting in my body? What am I? Am I drinking enough water? Am I getting enough sleep? Kind of the energy piece. Elimination, which I think is way underused. But what am I eliminating from my life on a consistent basis that allows me to have the space for something new to flow in? And I don't know if you guys are probably familiar with Bob Goff, but in one of Bob's books, he talks about that every Thursday he quit something, and one of those Thursdays he quit being a lawyer at the firm that he founded that he owned. So I thought that was pretty impressive. But basically, what am I eliminating? Toxic relationships, maybe negative social media, news in general, if I'm just feasting on that. So what am I eliminating from my life? And then we look at relationships, which I've already touched on, which is basically everything in life is relationship. And so how am I getting better at that. And for me, that's I sucked at communication, like true communication. I was good at talking at people, but not really being with them.
Right.
And so that's still a work in progress for me. But how am I being mindful and communicating more purposefully? And then purpose itself. What is the purpose of my life? What do I want it to be? And then how am I finding purpose in these other areas? Like, what's my purpose with my kids? And what's my purpose with my wife? And what's my purpose, in any interaction? What's my purpose here in this interaction? So I have an intention for it, not just showing up and kind of going with the flow, which, some days I just show up and go with the flow, but I want to be purposeful as much as I can in what am I giving back? Like on the drive, over here to do the podcast, I was like, well, what can I give? What can I do? What can I contribute to that conversation? And ultimately, usually my prayer is, well, whatever I'm supposed to contribute, you just do that for me, and I'll just sit there and kind of smile.
Yeah, right? You tee it up, and hopefully I'll see that it's teed up, and I'll hit that thing out of the park.
Real slow, just a big softball right up the middle. I've got the big, thick bat.
And if I miss it, give me another pitch.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So that's the way and then we break that down into a ton of subcategories. But that's kind of how we look at the general life. And that came from a physician here in town. He just said, if you feed the body and treat it right, then it takes care of itself. And then you have to work on purpose and relationships and what you're doing there. And then the elimination was just, that's if you don't eliminate. And I even looked, even if I just look at my physical house, how many Amazon boxes are showing up and and how much stuff's going out. And there's always way more coming in than there is going out.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like my house gets bloated a couple times a year. It's just like, we got to get this stuff out of here.
So my dad was in the Air Force and moved around, moved around a lot as a kid. We had a closet in our house in Louisiana growing up that was full of boxes. And if I remember right, there were 4 movers tags on each box.
Right.
And so then, they lived in that house for over 30 years, and we convinced them to move up to Wichita back in 2015 to be, near some grandkids, and as they aged to be near. And, so I was like, Dad, you're getting movers, right? And he's like, oh, yeah. We're not asking you to come down and load up a truck. We'll hire this out. And, I said, well, how much stuff are you bringing up? Because you're downsizing. They were getting a smaller house. And he's like, well, I got this closet with these boxes in it that he said, I literally have never opened them from the first tag.
Yeah, right.
And I'm like, well, what's in them? He's like, I just threw them away. And I'm like, really? And he's like, if I didn't care to know
well, good for him.
What was in the boxes for 30 years, then why would I care to know now when I was actually going to pay somebody to move it for me? And I didn't even need it, And I'm like,
something could have been in there that could have paid for the whole move,
right, exactly.
Probably not. My dad was enlisted in the Air Force. It's not like he's got
money.
A chest of gold or something in there. But but he held on to that, and he said, this stuff moved around, was all over the world.
Wow.
And I never opened them up, and then we ended up we had a closet in our house that literally was not able to be used because we had something in it. We didn't even know what it was. And he's like, you know what? I don't care to know. I'm just going to throw all that away. We're not paying anybody to move that one more time. I don't need one more tag on that box of what's there.
Good for him.
Yeah. Yeah, but wonder what was in there. Probably all my toys.
All your toys from babyhood.
Yeah.
all his third place awards.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
My third place awards would fit in a box. Matt's third. This is a third place
That's
award.
champ right there.
Nice.
Yeah.
They didn't have a big one. They just gave you that small one.
Yeah. No, he gave that to himself.
They didn't have any bigger that I could order
that
at
he
the
could
mall.
purchase.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah.
That was as tall as you could get in the box. Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I think that, I don't know. I just think it's the concept is fantastic. I think I've been getting a lot just out of the podcast and just the people that are on there, the questions that you guys ask, and getting some of the insights from that.
Yeah, no, but, it's been just like, as you guys know from doing a podcast, it's just always amazing. No matter who comes on, I learn something. I take a whole page of notes. Every podcast we have, I take a whole page of notes. I'm like, wow, I feel like I'm the one that's getting blessed with this conversation, because every time it's just all these gold nuggets are just flying out, and writing them down and thinking, okay, wow, how am I doing that in my own life? What am I doing there? So great teachers.
So let's just say we have a listener,
sure,
that's out there that's saying, some of this resonates with me.
Sure.
Like what would you do? What would be a next step? Just from an encouragement perspective, or
Well, I would just from an encouragement perspective in general, I would say just again, kind of find people that you can surround yourself with, even if it's one or two people. But in the beginning, when I started, before I even got started in business, for me it was the public library. I literally went to the public library and I thought, who's been successful in business in the last couple hundred years? And I just started checking those books out and reading them because that's what was important to me at that time.
Yeah.
But definitely in today's environment with all of the social media and all the ways we can connect, certainly look for people that are positive and in a space that you want. If you want financial success, then look for people that are positive, but not just trying to make money, but doing it on purpose.
Right.
I mean, doing something with it, but then also diet, nutrition, in any of that. Find people that are doing what you want to do, and then just figure out a way to engage them.
Yeah.
There's back again when I was younger, it was, for me, it was all about success and money because my family didn't have that, right? We never had that. So for me, I was driven to be successful. And so I'm at a charity auction here in town, and a chance comes up to go with Charles Koch to his house in Palm Desert and spend 4 days playing golf with him. I wasn't a great golfer and I didn't have the money, but I ended up buying that auction because I thought that's the fastest way for me to learn is to absorb. So I literally took my own advice and spent money I didn't have and went to Palm Desert, but I learned a ton about what actual wealth looked like, and it wasn't the MTV Cribs. I was going down there thinking this is going to be MTV Cribs. It wasn't that. It was Charles and Liz were very cool people, very accommodating, very, in a way, humble. It was kind of interesting, and just spending time with them was like, no, they're real people. They have, they talk and they walk, and they're not fictional characters.
Right.
And then of course, if they want to be connected to our community, just nextlevelmethod.com, and then they can download our app.
Yeah.
Go to the App Store and download the Next Level Method app. So.
And so I'm going to take that to another level. If you happen to be one of those people that have been successful, by all means, start sharing.
Definitely.
I saw something I had a few weeks ago, and we actually are going to talk about fishing here in a little bit. But I got a really good friend of mine that we fish together quite a bit, and he has a son-in-law that a city boy from Philadelphia, and ended up getting the Marines and moved around. Ended up in Louisiana,
right?
And married this guy's daughter. Didn't know anything about anything, and he's like, "Well, I fish a lot, and so I want you to come and fish with me." And so they have this bond,
right?
But I realized at this last time I was down there with him, I'm in the boat with both of them, and there were so many things that I knew, and that I knew that my friend knew, having grown up fishing, that had not transferred.
Right.
And I think he had this idea, and maybe this is how he was raised or whatever. If you should observe it and replicate it. But how I was raised, my dad was like, "Well, no, you should do that. You're doing that wrong. You should do it this way." Or you, I noticed that you, and I'll tell you one of the more simple ones. We were crappie fishing, and so hook for a minnow, a weight, and your fishing pole, with a line. And I typically, I'm like 6 inches, maybe 12 inches max, the weight away from the hook. And son-in-law was about 3 feet,
right.
And what we were doing, we were trying to get to the bottom. So the weight, is going to go all the way down to the bottom of the bank, and then you're going to reel up a couple cranks to make sure that the minnow is just getting up just off. And I'm like, look, man, like, number one, you're going to get hung up a lot because you got so much lead that's out there. Number two, you're never going to know if you're off the bottom,
Right.
And so he's like, "Wow, this is great, thanks, and then I'm thinking, why are you letting this happen? You're his father-in-law. You need to be teaching him this kind of stuff. You're just,
Maybe they bet every day on how much fish they
get.
That's probably true.
There are people that are willing to learn that are there, but they're also they may be right next to somebody who knows.
Right.
And so you need the people willing to learn to reach out, but you also need the people that know and have that experience to join the community as well, and to share, and whether that's being an expert or somebody that can share that specific skill, but just the people that are around you, don't be afraid to speak up and help in a very constructive way. Yeah.
Very good.
And I think in the whole time that's always something that's a gift I have, is if I don't know something, I just go ask.
Right.
And I don't know. So I can I can be dumb.
You're
about
okay with
this.
that. Yeah.
I'm completely, because I'm like, that's a pretty low bar. And anytime I've asked, I don't, maybe one time in the whole time that I've ever asked people, somebody actually said no.
Yeah.
It's always been, even competitors and stuff like that you would think, why would they ever? Because somebody asked them, and people love to share their experiences of life. If somebody just asks, hey, how did you do that? How did you actually do
Right.
that? Well, this is, if you really want to know, this is what we did. And you're like, oh, wow, yeah, thanks. That's good stuff.
I think of the like golfers. There are so many professional golfers that have instructional videos that they're readily available for free that's out there. And you're like, well, somebody learned all of that
Right.
and went out there and beat you with that, but they don't mind competition. And they also know that most everybody that was watching that video is a weekend warrior.
Never
and doesn't
gonna be
have the
competition.
drive.
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't have
right.
the drive to put the effort in enough to get to their level.
Yep. All right.
Well, cool.
Well, Matt, thanks for coming on the
thank
show.
you for having me.
Stick around. We're
Okay,
going to do
yeah.
the top 3 here very shortly.
At Admiral's Pennant, our mission is to offer the latest and refined, high-quality masculine products and services to the modern gentleman, as well as provide him with the tools and products necessary to look, act, and feel confident in his appearance and social interactions. Check it out at admiralspennant.com. Without it, you might as well shave.
And we're back.
I was going to try to take it from him.
Ah, you were too slow.
I was too slow. He jumped in on it. All right, moving on to our top 3. The top 3 today is top 3 places to fish. Chet,
All right. I'm going to start with an honorable mention.
you would.
I would. That's my way of squeezing in more than 3.
Oh, okay. I was like, all right.
Valentine Lake in central Louisiana. Very small lake. No motorized boats allowed. Absolutely gorgeous. And in the summertime, and it's a teardrop shape from a dam on a creek or whatever. But in the summertime, the sun sets exactly where the creek enters into the lake, and it's absolutely gorgeous. Lots of fish there. I hadn't caught a whole lot there, but it's just a really neat, calm, quiet lake. So,
Was that a childhood lake you used to visit, or?
yeah, in fact, my it's in a national forest, Kisatchie National Forest there in Louisiana, and my grandparents lived out of state, but they would come down and be campground hosts there, because in a national forest campground you can stay for free if you're the host. When you go check in, make sure everybody's there and paid and all that kind of stuff. And they would come down and spend a couple months there, so then we would just go and hang out with them. It's just right down the road from the house.
That's awesome.
But, yeah. So number 3, Kincaid Lake, which is not too far from Valentine Lake in the west end. So not just the whole lake in general, west end. And then there were many winter weekends that kind of around late January, early February, that my dad and I would go and run yo-yos. So does anybody know what a yo-yo is? So, and mostly illegal.
Yeah.
In most states, but it's an automatic fishing reel.
Yeah.
So just imagine a spool with line on it that's spring loaded, and then you've got a little lever, the catch, if you will. So you let line out, and then you set the lever there, and as soon as you pull against the spring, the lever trips, and the spring reels up the line. So we would go, and it was just it's real stumpy there. There's not like limbs where you can do limb lines. So we drive rebar into the stumps and tie these yo-yos on the end of the rebar and set them, with minnows. And what's really cool, you get there, you kind of set up your campground, all that kind of stuff, go set out all your yo-yos and bait them out. And then you go sit around the campfire, and then you could, on a calm night, you could hear them trip when they catch a fish. And you put little reflective tape on there so you can get your Q-beam and you scan the water and you see which ones have fish on it. And after a certain amount of time, you'll go and pick up the fish that you caught, rebait everything. And then you spend all night doing this. You get a couple hours of sleep in between. And then after the weekend's over, you got a whole mess of crappie, and it's a lot of fun. So
My number one
they've
fish to eat.
regulated those out of most states. And I know by the time my dad, when they moved up here, you had to have your name and address on every one of the reels that you had out there, and you couldn't have more than a certain amount.
Right.
Which at one time we were putting 5 or 6 dozen out in this one cove. So
Nice.
kind of they throttled that back a little bit. Number 2, Caddo Lake. It's a lake in northwest Louisiana. It's actually on the Louisiana-Texas state line. Pretty interesting history there. That was the first time anybody ever built a oil well over water. Like in the history of mankind, they chose this lake because there's a big reserve under that. But specifically, I'm giving some really good fishing tips away here as well. Tar Island Slough, part of Caddo Lake, and it's actually right on the state line. So when you start fishing on one part of the slough and go to the other side, you cross into Texas. But that is my favorite spot on Caddo Lake to fish.
Do you have to have a Texas license and a Louisiana fishing license?
You do not.
Okay.
Not if it is on a lake. You have to have one or the other. But as long as you're on that body of water with one or the other, you're good.
Yeah.
And then number 1, Lake Fork. That's in East Texas, just north of Tyler, east of Dallas. It is the best largemouth bass fishing lake in the country, in my opinion. I know they fluctuate with what's hot and what's not, but if you want to look at the size of the state of Texas, of all the top 50 largest bass that have been caught in the state of Texas, about 30 of them have come off of this one lake with, the top 10, 8 of the top 10. So massive fishery. And I go there a couple times a year. Of course, this year we went and crappie fished instead of bass fished just because of the time of year that we went.
And the 2 times I've been invited, the weather changed, didn't get a bite.
You didn't. I've never gone and not caught fish.
I think we caught like a couple little dink catfish, but we didn't catch like the largemouth bass.
It is hilarious. That's how it goes.
Yeah.
That's exactly how it goes, though.
Like
if I bring somebody.
That one time, the first time I went with you, that morning we left, Jeremy caught 2 big bass, but
yeah,
I was like, this lake's terrible. This place sucks.
That's exactly what I want. Because
Right.
like,
Yeah,
I don't need to go down there for that.
Right, exactly.
My brother-in-law Joel flew in from North Carolina and caught a bass that was like 4 inches. That was it. Sometimes that's just how fishing works out. You caught a bunch of catfish when you went.
I did.
Because we had the water came. We got a bunch of rain and the lake was rising, which means bass shut down, but the catfish kind of got active.
Yeah, I was catching them on beef jerky. I ran out of catfish bait and just right there on the dock, just put jerky on the line, threw it out, catfish.
There you go.
They'll eat anything.
Bottom
They
feeders.
really do anything.
But hey, fried catfish is still one of my favorite fish to eat. So I'm okay with it.
It's good.
Yep. So there you go.
All right.
My top 3.
Matt?
I don't even know if I can follow that. I've just
Chet always goes into a lot of detail. It's all right.
Yeah.
I'm a planner.
So well, first of all, I should have an advantage over all of you because my dad actually raised fish for the state of Kansas.
Oh, wow.
Largemouth, smallmouth.
Oh,
and
nice.
and spotted bass. And so I grew up in farm ponds actually, fishing in those. And those were always great fishing because
Oh, yeah.
all you did was throw the feet out.
Yeah, there
you
they
catch
were.
as many
Yeah.
as you want. But actually, I ranked it kind of on the amount of fun I had.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to go with Fish Lake in Minnesota. And we were catching, it was my dad and my uncle and my cousin. And we were catching northern pike. And it was like bass fishing. The water was crystal clear. And the best part of that was we caught a mess. The guides, we had some guides that were taking us out there. We just flipped fish. And I guess they have a Y bone. You have to cut the Y bone out to be able to eat that meat. And so they cut that Y bone out, and we went back and we baked it, or we pan fried it in a cast iron fry pan with, it was called moose spit batter, was the name of the batter.
Nice.
Sounds like something I'd like to try.
And it was the best eating fish I've ever had in my life. It was just like we were eating that fish within an hour after we caught it. And it was just amazing. I mean, we just ate all of it. It just melted in your mouth.
Oh, yeah.
So that was just a great experience to be with my family and out on the lake. And my next best fishing spot is actually Grand Lake for a similar reason. So one, technically you're not supposed to tie up to those bridge pylons.
Yeah.
So I'll
This
just
is
start
Grand Lake in Oklahoma.
Yeah, Grand Lake in Oklahoma. So So one night we had 2 boats, and we were tied up to those pylons. It must have been 10 or 11 o'clock at night, and we had a float light, and the float light attracted the shad, and underneath the shad, and the shad were all a couple inches long, and underneath the shad started schooling the white bass. And all we did was my uncle would dip net those shad. He'd put them, you just put your hook over there. He'd put them on a hook, and you just drop them straight through those shad into those white bass. And the next morning, we caught hundreds of white bass. The next morning, both those boats are just covered in scales. They just look shiny like sequins all over those boats. And again, it was my dad and my uncle, because we had a great time. And then I just got back a month ago from Alaska.
Yeah.
And that was by far the just beautiful. So we flew into Anchorage. We drove up to, and I'm going to mispronounce it, so if you live in Alaska, I apologize. I think it was Talkeetna is what I called it. It was
Talkeetna. Yeah.
Talkeetna. Okay, so we drove up to Talkeetna. It kind of stops, right? Talkeetna is kind of a dead end. There's a 4-lane highway or whatever it is straight up there, and then there's just nothing going out of there. And we got on a helicopter. We helicoptered another 20 or 30 miles up on the river and floated for 3 days, and it was just a ton of fun. We were catching these, the salmon were huge. We were catching salmon, rainbow trout, and Dolly Varden, Varden, and really pretty fish. And so we were catching those, and then you're whitewater rafting basically that whole time. So it wasn't just fishing. You were fishing and whitewater rafting and fishing while you're whitewater rafting.
Oh, wow.
It was just so beautiful. And just to sleep out in the open and, on the riverbank and cooking out and everything, it was great. So that would be my
That's a gorgeous place.
Just beautiful. I'd never been to Alaska. It was my first time. So it was gorgeous.
So Troy's uncle has been in, I don't even know, creative for product placement, if you will, and he
creative director for years.
And he used to work for a clothing company, and they'd go on location to shoot for catalogs and whatnot. And I think he's mentioned it a couple times. That's his best on location place he's ever been was Talkeetna.
It was gorgeous up there. And then just the semi fear of bears all the time getting eaten alive. So you always had that sense, especially at 2 a.m. when you're out relieving yourself. It's just like at any moment a bear could come charging out of the woods and kill me. So there's that. Throw that in the mix.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So my top 3. Number 3 would be Beaver's Bend in Broken Bow, Oklahoma. It's just south of the Broken Bow Lake. And it's kind of special to me because that was the place I had my bachelor party.
Yeah, I was about to say. Yeah, I've fished there. Yeah.
Yeah, we went trout fishing there, or fly fishing for trout.
Yeah.
And I slipped and fell in the creek. So that was fun. It's on video too, but I'm not going to share it. And then number 2 is the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah.
Yep.
I absolutely am addicted to deep sea fishing in the Gulf of Mexico. I would go there 3 or 4 times a year if I had the money to do it.
Yeah.
Red drum. Did you catch red drum?
I've only been a handful of times, and we caught
like amberjack is what you remember, what you told me about.
Yeah,
so
we
much.
caught amberjack. Man, we caught all kinds of fish. Like mahi. Yeah, a lot. And I mean, I have a picture of me holding up like this 50, 65 pound fish, that I reeled in. It took me 20 minutes to get in the boat. I mean, just the most fun I've ever had fishing. Except for my number 1. Number 1 is Holy Cross Wilderness, where we hiked Holy Cross Mountain Summit Trail. That's where we were filming that episode of.
We passed the Summit Trail. We just went right past it.
Okay.
Lake Constantine.
That's right.
And then 2 Hair Lakes.
Yeah,
upper and lower 2 Hair. Tuhare.
And we were 12,000?
Yeah,
feet
those
above?
were 12,000 feet. Those were at the tree line.
Yeah, that was an experience. But I mean, to get over my hiking sickness, altitude sickness, I would just go fish, and we just spent all day fishing, catching trout, all day, and then we did the same thing. We pan fried them, and Sean actually, our friend Sean was with us, and he brought like little things of spices, and we were putting spices on them, and just living out in the wilderness. And
we'd only keep just 2 per person. They were smaller trout.
Yeah.
And then you guys got into some cutthroat up in the Two Hair Lakes, which is pretty rare to get into cutthroat trout in Colorado.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gorgeous. It was a gorgeous place.
Yeah. Matt, what you got?
My number 3, I'm not giving away the location. But it is a lake that you have to hike to in Breckenridge.
Okay.
And
Not a Maggie Pond
nope.
right there in the middle of everything.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. This one.
Oh yeah, I've been there. I know what you're talking
yeah,
about.
I'm
Those
trying
big
to-
koi.
Yeah.
Right.
And they got the balls you can get inside, paddle boards and all that stuff.
Yeah, no. Matter of fact, there's an off-road trail, I believe, at Maggie Lake that I looked at doing this year. But no, and this one, you hike up to it, and I remember the very first time that I went, it was just after I'd graduated, and my wife, we were just friends at the time, but she goes, their family goes to Breckenridge every year, and she goes, hey, do you want to go before I go off to college? And I was like, yeah, let's go. And so we end up and we hike up to this lake, and there's a big boulder just in the middle of this lake, and then we waded out to the boulder and and had lunch, and I was like, man, this would be an incredible place to fish.
I was about an incredible place to ask her to marry me.
That's what I was thinking too.
We weren't even dating at the point.
Man, I thought we were getting sentimental Matt here.
No, but and just it's the same thing. I mean, it's just surrounded by mountains on all sides. We had the snow caps, and we hiked up even past that into the snow, and then it was like trying to decide because her parents were 4 or 5 miles back, and so it was like, well, do we want to just hop over the ridge and walk back down around to town, or what do we want to do? But I mean, I think since I've been there again, it's a lot more crowded than it used to be, and so that's why it's number 3 on my list.
Exactly everything having to do with Breckenridge everything is more crowded than it's been in the past.
Well, I think it has to do with Vail buying Breck, but and bringing their commercialism to the small little mountain town that used to be. But that not necessarily great fishing, but
Great spot.
great spot. That's where I caught my wife. Good fishing. Number 2, and it was a tough choice between number 2 and number 1. But number 2, I'm going to go the Ross River in Yukon Territory, Canada. I was up there on my moose hunt, and
That guy?
nope.
Oh.
The one before, I didn't get that guy.
Oh.
So I went up on this trip, and the buddy that I was with shot a moose the first day. The next day shot a grizzly. The next day after that shot a wolf. And then he spent the rest of the time fishing. And I passed on the first day because it wasn't it wasn't big enough, right? And I was like, I've got 11 days left. Why am I going to shoot on the first day and then have nothing else to do?
And your guide was thinking the whole time, you shouldn't have passed on that, man.
No, I asked him. He's like, well, it's really your choice, but... So I was like, well, hold off. But then my buddy spent the rest of the time fishing and was just slaying the fish. And so, I mean, 11 days of really not seeing anything at all. I was like, let's just go do some fishing. And I'm not kidding. Every time I threw that spinner in the water, I got a fish every single time. And we were catching drawing a blank.
Fish.
We were catching fish.
Salmon.
Sounds like.
No.
Trout.
In canoe was one of them, and in canoe's a white fish, and it's probably the best tasting fish that I've personally ever had. And pike was the other.
Oh yeah, the Northerns.
And when you compare the two side to side, that in canoe is just so much better than the pike. But it was just kind of the experience of being on that river and then coming back, and all we had was a campfire and a spike camp, and come back, and my buddy's guide, his girlfriend was there specifically to be camp cook. And so when we brought back all the fish, she's there in camp. Okay, well, let's figure something out. And so you're talking about moose spit.
Moose spit batter, yeah.
So all we had was moose fat from his moose
right.
to fry it up with.
Oh, gosh.
And so we had a cast iron skillet. She rendered down the fat. We used that fat. We breaded them with barbecued Lay's potato chips. And then she fried those in the moose fat. And I'm talking the absolute best fish I've ever eaten in my entire life. It was so good. But just, it's so quiet there that all you hear is the water.
Right.
There's literally nobody else around. We're on, First Nations is the tribe. So it's tribal land. You had to request permission to be there. Nobody else is there. You might catch the occasional person that's floating, but that's it.
Yeah.
I saw 2 people, the whole time I was there. And then, my number 1 is, the Hoodoo River in Alaska. And we stay at, this place called Hoodoo Lodge, and we go every year, as part of Wounded Warrior Outdoors, and we take guys and get them out, fishing there. And I mean, you're just there's no comparison, because we're catching all 5 species of salmon. We're catching the rainbows, we're catching the dollies, and it's just, even a slow day is better than any freshwater fishing day I've ever had. And we end up about halfway through, we'll fly up, either by float plane or by, this beaver with tundra tires on it. And the owner of the lodge is an incredible pilot, to where he can just, he turns that beaver on its side basically, and comes in and lands on the shore that's only as wide as this office. We're talking 12, 14 feet wide, and he's landing, and he actually goes in and cuts the brush down so that the wings don't hit the brush as they're flying in. And, but as we're flying over, you can see, because the sockeye go into the lake to spawn, and it literally is just a sea of red.
Right.
And then the dollies are swimming right behind them, eating the eggs. And so that's where we fish for the dollies and catch all the dollies. And I think we were up there this year, and, I was just kind of watching everybody fish and just kind of hanging out, because I'd spent 2 weeks there, with both, 1 week with group 1 and a week with group 2. So by group 2, I was just like, all right, I'm
tired.
My arms are sore.
Yeah.
And so, but on the dolly day, I was like, I'm going to go up there and I'm just going to try to fish dolly. I'd probably caught 21 just right in a row, every cast.
Cool. And
the bears, this year I think I saw 6, 8 bears, while I was there. A really nice caribou coming down. That's one of the most beautiful places to be in the fishing. It's just incredible.
Yeah.
I love it there. That's my top 3.
That's cool.
Nice.
Troy and I are going to have to go to Alaska.
Yes.
Get in on some of this.
That's right.
Some of this
Might
action.
have to change my top 3 if I visit there.
Beautiful.
Well, we ought to just book a trip. I mean, it's a once in a lifetime thing,
Yep, it really is.
Yeah. All right. Who's got the
I've got
good
the
word?
Good word. I've got the good word.
Bring us the good word.
Our
Chet.
good word for today is consistency. And I came across this, actually, I'm teaching a leadership course at church, and some material that I've learned in the secular world, and I'm finding where that's already been taught in Scripture. So I've been in Corinthians, 2 Corinthians a lot over my life, and I caught something that I hadn't caught before, even though I've read over it. It just hit me this time. 2 Corinthians chapter 10, and this is Paul writing to the church at Corinth for the second time, and he's back actually giving a report on some feedback that he got off his first letter in this portion of the Scripture, and so in verse 8 it says, so even if I boast somewhat freely about the authority the Lord gave us for building you up rather than tearing you down. So he's talking about he and some of the other people that were investing into the church at Corinth. The book of 1 Corinthians is pretty harsh based on some things that they were struggling with. He was very blunt with that. So he's saying, I was, free about the authority the Lord gave me, and I built you up with that as opposed to tearing you down, and I'm not ashamed of that. Verse 9, he says, I do not want to seem to be trying to frighten you with my letters, For some of you say, and this is a quote, his letters are weighty and forceful, but in person he is unimpressive and his speaking amounts to nothing. He said, such people should realize that what we are in our letters when we are absent, we will be in our actions when we are present. So he's acknowledging feedback that some of you think that I'm really forceful and I'm very powerful in the written word, but I'm lame in person. You know, my interpretation of that. Mm-hmm. And he's saying, I just want to let you know the same person that wrote that letter and is the same person that shows up and physically. It's I'm not a different person in the written word than I am when I'm going to be there and working with you in person. And a lot of times, and this is, we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but from a consistent standpoint, we need to be who we are, who we should be when we're typing away at the computer, where it may be monotonous. And then when you're on stage in front of people, you got to be the same person, be consistent with your life, and to be able to bowl, verse 11, people should realize that in our letters, when we were not present, but our letters were there, our actions are going to be the same when we are there. So what I'm telling you that you should do, I'm going to live that out when you see me. Like, that's who I am. Like, I'm not telling you to do things that I'm not doing, so that consistency that's there. And I think it's pretty interesting, number one, that Paul's acknowledging feedback with, I hear what you're saying, but I'm also going to demonstrate what I'm telling you. It's not just what I tell you. You're going to see this when I show up with there too. So whatever persona that you want to put on in front of people, if it's not who you are in private, that's going to end up coming down on you at some point in time in the future. But to be authentic and to be your true self, and in public, in private, in the written word, in your persona on your social media, or wherever you have your own persona, you need to be the same person when you show up and you're in the room with somebody. So a little good word on consistency from Paul in 2 Corinthians.
It's good. I like it.
So what that comes down to. He wasn't just talking about it.
He was being about
it.
He was being about it. I thought about that. That's one of his mottos. Don't talk about it, be about it. Yeah.
And, you got to think too, if he was presenting his writings today and he was doing it online, how many people would have posted that keyboard warrior badge on his, and then he's like, nope, meet me in person.
Yeah.
Find out.
That's good. That's good.
All right. Well, Matt, I appreciate you coming again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, sure thing. And can you remind our listeners where they can
nextlevelmethod.com?
Yeah, nextlevelmethod.com, or download the app, or go to the podcast.
Or the App Store, yeah.
Yeah, we've got the App Store.
Any App Store that you have on any device that you have.
That's right.
Very good. All right, and you can find us at hardheadedpodcast.com. Shoot us an email if you want to see us talk about a top 3 that you haven't heard yet. We'd love to do that for you. Also, click on the merch button if you want to get some swag. I don't know what word y'all want me to use.
Shirts,
merchandise,
shirts, or stickers.
They want me to spell out merchandise, but it's just too long for
the cool rock stars say merch.
Yeah, that's what I like.
I said the cool rock stars, not me, not you. The cool rock stars.
We're not cool rock stars,
right?
Yeah.
Not yet.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for listening. You don't know how hard it was for me to pass on I've got a monkey right next to me at my desk, because I sit right here and Matt sits right here. And I was like, I got a monkey that sits next to me.
Like, I got that same monkey.
Is what it is. That monkey's not here too often, though.
Yeah, that's true.